Monster Hunter Wilds is available to be played at Gamescom this year, but I can't make it out to Germany, so Capcom was kind enough to have me fly down to San Francisco so I could get my hands on it for the first time. Now, I only have at most 20 minutes of video I'm allowed to show off, with about 36 minutes of personal gameplay footage to edit, so I want to get right into what I noticed, experienced, and enjoyed from my hotel room on this random microphone I just purchased, so, sorry about any quality issues. Wilds is the evolution of Monster Hunter, but most noticeably of Monster Hunter World specifically. While Rise was a bit of a departure from World's hyper-realistic design, bringing back portable series mechanics such as weapon skills and arts, Wilds looks to take what World did best and try to evolve it. The graphical and character design is much more reminiscent of World over Rise, despite it being on the newer RE engine, and the game seems to be trying to use the most out of next-generation hardware that it can, providing open-world areas for the player to explore while minimizing the use of loading screens and the like. You can go straight from the base camp where you accept a quest and ride the new secret to your destination without switching zones like in previous entries. Similar to the Palamute from Rise, we now have access to a new mount that we can take on our adventures. However, while Rise allowed you to choose between Palamutes and Palicos or some combination of the two, Wilds has returned the focus to Palicos specifically while making the secret its own dedicated mechanic, rather than a buddy who fights alongside you. Something I was personally fond of. There seems like there will be much more focus on the customization and development of the Palico this time around, while still allowing you to have the extra maneuverability of a mount. Palamutes were such a popular feature for the mounting alone that it seemed as though they would have become a dedicated feature in the series, especially with it now being open world. To see that turned into the secret, which is a more involved mount, has been an appreciated change. Secrets can run, climb vertically, and glide across the map, making maneuverability even more freeing than it already was in the last entry. This is still a more grounded, world-based experience. You aren't going to be flying through the sky on wire bugs anymore. And while there are more vertical zones, the demo build that we had access to focused on the starting area, which I believe is called the Windward Plains, which is flatter overall. However, the minimap has been upgraded significantly and seems to actively show you the layering and elevation of your immediate area, making it easier to navigate these dense and detailed environments in comparison to something like Ancient Forest and World. In that vein, scout flies have marked their return, at least as a guidance system or a GPS to help you locate a monster without having to pull out your map. From my understanding, tracking has been heavily simplified, and once you find a monster for the first time, you won't have to worry about tracking it down again. Ever. Hopefully. I didn't get that many times to try and see for myself. Capcom has seemed to take a page out of EA's book as well with their Monster Hunter-like game Wild Hearts. With the new open world, you can now finish a hunt and immediately run off to explore, starting new hunts as you see fit. They did this in a really nice way too. A hunt isn't considered to begin until you spend enough time or damage interacting with a monster. Once you have, it will tell you that the quest has begun, and it's as if you have selected a full hunt from the quest board like in previous entries. There is never a reason to go back to the base camp if all you want to do is hunt, at least until it's time to progress past whatever it is you are currently hunting. They have also taken inspiration in terms of quality of life from their development of Street Fighter VI, which became one of the best games to get in and out of matches and rematches for. Rematches can be near instantaneous in Street Fighter, and Wilds looks to remove similar downtime. You can skip cutscenes, you can even skip the timer at the end of the hunt, ending the quest immediately if you feel like it. The idea being to get you into the next experience as fast as possible so you can optimize your game time in hunts rather than waiting around and twiddling your thumbs. Other returning features include the slinger, which you can find various ammunition types for, as well as basic things you've come to expect, such as eating for bonuses and the ability to change equipment at a campsite. For all intents and purposes, this feels like the sequel to World, basically including enough comprehensive changes and features to look at it as a sequel over an expansion. A huge change change to armor sets that I have personally been vocal about is the removal of gender-locked gear, and I think this has been done in the best way. I never had an issue with there being gender designs in the game, but I did have a problem with them being locked to specific body types. Now, male and female characters that unlock a gear set can choose to wear the Type A or Type B design variations as they see fit, and you can even mix and match these per piece of equipment. Maybe you like the Type A headpiece but the Type B waist. The world is your oyster, and this is one of the best changes I've seen in the game thus far. Wilds has also stuck to the new modern skill system within the game, allowing you to stack tiers of various armor skills rather than the old school way of earning enough points to see benefits. I'll take a W where I can, I guess. I prefer the old system, but the changes to gendered armor alone are enough for me to see the developers listening and making improvements based on player feedback. Obviously, the biggest change is going to be with the weapons. I unfortunately did not have a lot of time to play through the game and test out a large variety of them, so I stuck to what I played the most personally, that being longsword and hunting horn, oddly enough. After a weird solo world run through I did, I wanted to try gunlance as well, but wasn't able to within the time limit. Let me say, while I don't know if it's true for every weapon, many of them have been changed significantly. Longsword alone has become hyper-mobile in comparison to what we are used to from World, with things like the Spirit combo now allowing you to sidestep during the initial hit, as well as your main combo changing when you hit the highest tier of Spirit gauge. You still have things like Foresight Slash and the Sheath mechanic, but there seems to be a higher precedent in allowing the player to spend more time in Red State or Level 3, rather than blowing it all on a Helmbreaker. That doesn't mean you won't be doing that, of course. In fact, Helmbreaker now has a follow-up attack only available when performed at level 3 that allows you to perform even more follow-up damage at the cost of not 1 but 2 levels. So you'll go from level 3 to level 1 in one attack if you manage to connect it, but it can be worth it considering how much damage it seems to apply. But like I said, you may choose to stay in the red gauge and deal damage a different way. With the changes at level 3, your main attack combo becomes much faster with extra hits of damage, and from what I saw, some extra mobility as well. To top it off, Longsword has a new charging move where you can hold the Spirit combo button to build gauge over time. More importantly, you can attack out of this stance to get a free Spirit gauge level up, meaning leveling the gauge is easier than it ever has been, and while that might sound boring, I believe the reason for this is because they wanted to step away from how focused the weapon was on the countering mechanic, and I have been begging for that change since World, so this was made for me. This is a super rad change, and you all just have to live with it. Sucks to be you. But the biggest news I have for you guys, and something I've already been mentioning on Twitter, is, in my opinion, a huge change that is going to greatly affect the meta of the game. As many of you know, players may now bring 2 weapons at a time with them on a hunt. To change between these 2 weapons, you need to mount your secret, again I can't remember, and press right on the D-pad. This opens up a world of possibilities for you. You can go from melee to ranged, from fire to ice, from one playstyle to another completely different playstyle. But I had one question on my mind as soon as I sat down to play the demo. Do hunting horn buffs stay active when you switch weapons? The answer to this is exciting, but also one that some of you may be worried about due to, the implications. Yes, you can buff yourself with a hunting horn and then switch to another weapon. Buffs like self-improvement alone are huge boons for other weapons since it improves unsheathed movement speed and prevents deflections in combat. Add on to this elemental boosts or attack and defense buffs, and you could see how this may snowball into becoming a meta necessity for some players out there, especially solo players. What's better than a longsword? A longsword buffed to shit by your own personal hunting horn. Obviously, the other biggest feature of Monster Hunter is the monsters, and while I can't say that there is anything specific about individual monsters that wowed me, I am happy to report that Wyvern Rioting is out and typical mounting is back in, meaning you get to mash a knife into the back of some unsuspecting giant dog animal like you did in World. In Wilds, doing this enough will eventually create a weak point, and if you do a weapon attack on said weak point, you can get it down allowing for a greater opening. Weak points are a sort of new mechanic tied to the focus mode feature that has been added, and it seems to be a bit of a substitution for the clutch claw, albeit less disruptive to the hunt. Focus mode allows you to more finely aim attacks at a monster. This is specifically used for attacking weak points that show up while in this mode, a mode in which you could technically be in indefinitely with no limit as long as you are holding L2 or whatever shoulder button it is for you. The power of focus mode seems to vary between weapon to weapon. For longsword, I found that I was specifically using the finisher that you can perform within it to destroy the weak points and open up a new high damage area similar to tenderizing from Iceborne. Additionally, monsters may now hunt in packs. Generally, you can run into a group of the same large monster. However, one of them will be considered an alpha of the pack, and that's the one that you're meant to hunt. You can try to hunt them all together if you want, but obviously hunting 4 monsters at once isn't super enjoyable all the time. Sometimes it's enjoyable. A little, sometimes there's a challenge element to it. Now we have the new large dung bomb nukes we can fire off to make the packs disperse long enough for us to focus on the alpha. I also found that there was plenty of new ways for monsters to interact with the environment. I had one that was actively making sinkholes in the sand to inhibit my movement, or even falling into giant sinkholes themselves that acted as natural traps for big damage, similar to things we saw in World and Rise. And just to answer some questions I was asked ahead of time that I haven't really covered yet, no, there were no returning monsters hidden in the demo. However, the new flagship was possible to run into. Yes, armor is genderless, as I mentioned previously. No, monster part icons haven't really changed at all. Also, I'm still really lucky in these games. I was seeing a ton of gems. And finally, no, hot and cold drinks don't seem to be returning, but I just didn't see them, so you never know. I obviously can't fit in everything I've seen in my time playing within this video, since I only was allowed so much time to make it, and it can only be like 20 minutes long. It's probably going to be shorter than 20 minutes, but it can only be 20 minutes long, so, my bad. I don't have further access to the demo either, but I may be able to look up something within my footage to answer questions I haven't currently addressed. So if you enjoy this content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Hit me up in the comments here or on Twitter, and I will try to answer your questions when I can. I'm already answering a ton of questions on Twitter, but I will try to answer your questions here as well, because I'm such a nice guy. I'm so nice and giving. Superrad's so nice and giving, it's crazy. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.